Marathon, Virgin Money London Marathon, of course, and a really special one too. It's an athlete we've got with us in the room. I think I can still call this young lady an athlete, who is a living legend, and that's no exaggeration. Hard to find superlatives that are not too cliched about this athlete, but I know all of you know who I'm talking about. She's 3 times the London Marathon champion, setting a world record in the middle of those 3 in 2002, 2003 and 2005. She won here in London. Her world record is unapproached. She's still the fastest athlete in the world by over 3 minutes. She was the 2005 world champion. She has the 3 fastest times in history. I mean, it just goes on. She was European 10,000 metre champion, almost breaking 30 minutes in the pouring rain in Munich 13 years ago. She's now a mum, of course, a very active person within the sport who I think has got a huge future in the way this sport is guided in years to come. I hope she has anyway. Please put your hands together for Paula Radcliffe.
Thank you.
You might talk. Paula, we're going to have a little chat now. And you must be looking forward to the years when you can have a gin and tonic or a beer or 2 in front of you, but those are to come. But first of all, Race Director Hugh Brayshaw has got an announcement to make. Hugh.
Hi, Paula. The announcement is to say that this year, after the marathon, we have commissioned a John Disley Lifetime Achievement Award. For those of you, John Disley was the co-founder of the marathon, and I think there can be no more fitting recipient of the first award. You are a woman who basically has inspired a whole host of women to take up the sport. Go back to 1981 and less than 5% of the finishers were women. Now it's nearly 4%. I was working in a sports shop in 2003, and after your victory then, the number of women that came in, we actually sold out of women's running shoes for 3 months, basically because of that run that you did. So I think it's absolutely fitting after the marathon, on the presentation podium, after the elites, when you finished on Sunday, you will be the recipient of the Lifetime Award, and John Disley will be presenting it to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it should be the other way around. I think it's the London Marathon that inspired me into running, and for me, I think it's a huge gratitude to get the chance to run this year. I know I'm not going to be competitive, obviously, with the elite women there, but to get the chance to take part in this race one more time, for me, is something really, really special.
Come on then, are the bits holding together, and you're going to get round on Sunday, you're going to be able to get to the finish to receive this award?
Definitely looking a lot better now than it was even 3 weeks ago. So I was going really well and went out to Kenya with the British team out there.
You didn't start overtraining by any chance, did you?
Well, I didn't think I was. I thought I was being really careful and not getting carried away, but I probably did start thinking about what times I might be able to run and what I might be able to do, and then because my foot wasn't moving properly and the trails are pretty rocky as well out there, I just tweaked my Achilles, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal at first, and the actual tendon itself was fine, but it was just inflammation around that, and it took about 6 weeks to get it settled down, and been able to run every day now since Easter weekend, so not the ideal preparation, but at least now I feel like I'm going in healthy, I'm going in unfit, and I'm prepared for a marathon, but I'm hoping that my body can remember once it gets out there how I'm supposed to do it.
Realistically, is this 26 miles of high-fiving and just enjoying it and relaxed and running a 2:45 or something, or are you going to go down, head down and try and run something real?
There's a lot of people who tell you 2:45 is not that easy to run relaxed as well. So I think it's just, to be honest, I don't have split times in my head at all. I just want to go and just, I do want to enjoy it, but at the same time, I want to feel like I've run the London Marathon hard and I've given it as good a shot as I can on the day. So I want to finish with a smile on my face, but I also want to feel like I've run it pretty decent. So I won't be stopping all the way, but I will definitely be savouring the atmosphere and hopefully needing the encouragement, but taking the encouragement that I can get on the way round. And I'm sure it will be special. It's my first time to get the chance to actually run in the middle of the mass race, because on the women's race you always go off in front, and yes, you still get an amazing atmosphere the whole way along the route, but I'm sure actually being in the middle of the race and being in the centre at the start it's going to be a whole different experience in the whole
the
festival.
whole spectrum of new experiences for you. There'll be an overload. But going back to your 3 wins in London, Paula, for example, your world record run, have you got specific moments during the race that you remember that have stuck in your mind? I mean, maybe going through halfway and thinking, geez, what have I done? Look at the time. I mean...
So from 2003?
Yeah.
In 2003, I remember the 3rd mile because that's the one that's slightly downhill. And then I think I found out afterwards that maybe the marker was a little bit early as well. So that was the one that came up at 4:50 something. And I did there think, oops, that was a little bit too quick. But tried not to worry about it because it was done by then and just settled down into the pace that I was running. And really, the only thing I remember I had in my head there was that I knew the average from Chicago had been 5:13 per mile, and I wanted to try and hit as many miles as I could under the 5:13 to just run faster. So when I went through halfway, I knew I was up on that. And I think always when I run London, I tried to go through halfway and then pick it up after that. So.
Did you just have 10k written on your arm, what split you'd need to do? Or how were you,
I didn't have any.
Where were you getting the figures from?
The truck goes in front of me, and at the end
It's giving you every mile?
Each mile it flashed up, yeah, so it came up, and then I was counting in my head as well, so I was guessing roughly.
This is in a world record run?
Yeah.
But what about, were there 2 Kenyans with you the whole way?
No, one of them stopped around somewhere in the Docklands, around 15,
and I know you said before you don't
miles.
feel that they really affected your run because...
Well, no, I think what it was I was really conscious that I didn't want it to be just pacemakers. I wanted it to be more like if I was just in a race. So I ran alongside them when I could, and if I was behind them, I didn't run right behind them. I dropped back a little bit. But I think most of the time I was running alongside them, and I genuinely was annoyed that Christopher beat me at the end. Because when we came into the sprint, into the turn, I remember we came around the corner and he got sent down the men's finish and I went down the women's, and he beat me by a second. And I don't know where he got that in the last 100 metres.
You're lucky, I guess. I mean, you've been held together by a few operations and one screw here, there. But you're lucky in that you've got to 41 and you're still able to run reasonably well. You've ticked pretty much all the boxes through a track career, cross-country career. You've been world cross-country champion after several attempts and eventually getting it right. Your road racing career is second to none, obviously. Do you appreciate how lucky you've been in that, you know, the career has been, 25 years long, running every day virtually, maybe longer than that?
I think now I do, definitely. I mean, I think when you're in it, you always, you take one goal that you've been working towards off and you're picking the next one and you're working towards that, and I don't think you really take the time then to really appreciate everything, and I think it's probably the way it needs to be when you are in the middle of your career, but certainly the time in 2012 when I couldn't run at all and I had the big operation until I was able to get back running, and even struggling to get back running through 2013, then I think you really start to appreciate just what a gift it is just to be able to get out and just to run and just to enjoy doing that, but to have had as long a career as I have, and people say to me, oh yeah, but you're always injured, and like, I am towards the end, but maybe that's just because of how long a career I had, and I think when I look back and think, well, maybe it's the left foot that's caused all the problems, but then in 1994 I was told I'd never run again on it then, and we were able to stick it together well enough to kind of get me through my career, and it was only towards the end that it's really started to break down. Yeah, because I had a non-union stress fracture.
21 years ago you were told, okay.
And that day I remember clearly coming home and in tears, and my dad saying to me, well, what's the big deal? Loads of people go through life and they don't run. I said, yeah, but I'm not loads of people. I've got lots of things I want to do, and it has to get better, and it kind of did.
And you have done most of those things you wanted to do. There's so many peaks, you know, one sort of loses count when you look at your CV. What about regrets? I mean, you know, the Olympics is obviously, I guess, the main one, and that, again, there's so much luck involved in that. Any others?
Well, I mean, I try and kind of have this philosophy not to have regrets, because we can't go back and change it anyway. Obviously, the Olympics is a big disappointment, especially the marathon at the Olympics. I mean, on the track, I feel I was able to go there, give it my best shot. It just wasn't good enough on the day in Sydney, and I ended up fourth. but I do feel that I was able to go and give it my best shot there. In the marathon I wasn't, and that is a big disappointment to me. But then there are lots of other times when I have been able to go on the day that everything was planned for and to give it my best shot, and it was good enough to get what I'd aimed for and beyond that. So I think if I look at in balance, of course there are things I'm disappointed, but there's a lot of things that as an 11-year-old starting out in the sport I never would have dreamed that I would have been able to achieve. So I think there's probably a lot more ups than there were downs throughout the whole time.
I was talking to Steve Cram yesterday, and Steve said very eloquently, I think it's on camera somewhere, about how you represented the, not trying to talk to you in the third person, but he said, Paula, it was the coming together of so many factors that were fortuitous and engineered by you as well. That's what made you so special. That's what's enabled you to run the 2:15. Do you see anybody else in the current scene who can approach that sort of time? And do you feel it is living on borrowed time? It's only a matter of time before somebody comes out and beats it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I think all records are there to be beaten, and it will be beaten at some point. I don't want it to be, but it will be, because that's the nature of the sport. It is moving on the whole time, and I don't think that I particularly had any more talent than anybody else. Certainly there are people around who now who've probably got more talent, but I maybe just had this stubborn, I don't know, I just had a way of wanting to run as hard as I could in the race, and actually that, even when I had the race won, I wanted to see how fast I could go. And so maybe it was kind of a little bit more the mindset combined with the luck as well of being able to get into really good shape, my body being able to withstand the amount of training that it did for those few years. And maybe that's why I do keep getting injured now, because of the amount of training that I did put in through that period. But that did enable me to get into really good shape and to be able to attack it.
I mean, your preparation was famously meticulous. Is there part of you that would quite like to go into coaching after this and guide other people into that same sort of being that specific and exact in their preparation?
Yeah, I think so. I enjoy doing the kind of mentoring, camp coordinating work that I do with British Athletics, and I enjoy kind of being in that camp situation and being able to, maybe if you can just see something, like a mistake that I made early on in my career that you can maybe stop someone else making now, then I think that's worth it then. And just the rewards as well of seeing just people come through and grow and train really hard and then come back and compete well. I think that's nice to see, and nice to be able to support in a little way there.
I mean, it sounds like you really do want to stay in the sport, embedded in the sport, with whatever different caps on. But I mean, turning to the family life and a bit of normality and everything, and you were talking earlier about conversation you had with Isla a few days ago. Can you recount that?
So she said to me, because she'd been picking up on little things that had been going around, and she said, so Mummy, this time next week, won't you be running at all? And I said, no, well, actually probably next week I won't be running, because we're going to go away and have a holiday, and after the marathon I'm planning on taking some time off to let things heal again. I said, but after that I will always go out for runs and things. I just won't be preparing to be competitive in races and really putting everything into going away on training camps and things like that. And she looked at me and she said, but Mummy, you really haven't been competitive for a few years now. And then she said, so what will the difference be? And I said, well, just if we're coming home, I've been running while you've been at school, and then you want me to come to the park with you or do homework and things like that. I said, I'll be able to do that. I won't have to go out training again. She went, oh, well, that's okay then. So that's all she's bothered about, really. And
have you got ambitions about part two of your life, so to speak, you know, without being a competitive athlete at all? You know, fishing, golf, I don't know, what are your hopes to actually do stuff that you've not been able to do?
Actually, you know, I don't feel like there's a whole lot of stuff that I've missed out on. I don't feel like I've had to make huge sacrifices. I think I've been lucky to have been able to have as my career something that would have been my hobby anyway, and I've had a lot of fun doing. I've met some amazing people, I've been to some amazing places, and if my body would hold together, I would keep doing it for a lot longer. It's that frustration of getting injured, of that panic of like everything depending on my body holding together from the whole team around. That's kind of what's saying, okay, it's time now to forget being that, plus I can't be competitive anymore because of my foot and things like that. But no, I don't feel like there's a whole lot of things that have been on hold. But yeah, there are some things. I mean, obviously just being a little bit more relaxed, not having to always think about the race that you're getting ready for or the training session that you've got to do that evening or the next morning. But definitely staying involved in the sport. And it's a little bit daunting, kind of changing career at 41 as well, and thinking, well, what exactly am I going to do next?
So you haven't got it planned out really where you'd like to go? You must have had lots of conversations about...
Not 100%. It's more, I think, maybe things that will just kind of open up, and they almost are doing already in ways where I obviously still stay involved, being ambassadors for different events, still working with Nike and still trying to just give something back to a sport that has given me a lot. I'd like to stay involved with kids, maybe get involved with the IAAF, maybe do something with anti-doping, I don't know. There's kind of a lot of things that I'm just thinking about and seeing which direction feels right. I mean, I'm really enjoying doing the BBC's things, and I think if you can't be in the arena competing, the next best thing is almost to be privileged enough to be commentating on it and kind of still getting the adrenaline and the nerves in some way there.
In this age of sports psychologists and so many other things bolted onto an athlete, do you think there might be a possibility in 2 or 3 weeks' time you get back from holiday and Gary will have to hide your training shoes because you'll be wanting to go out training and continuing and getting back into it? Because there was quite a big mental adjustment after so many years of working hard.
I mean, I fully expect I'll still be running every day for a while, yeah, and I hope that I'll still be able to fit that in. It's just that instead of, I think it's just the focus of the day maybe changes. So instead of the day being focused around my run will just fit around the rest of the day. But it's still an important part of me. It's still something that makes me feel better for the day and I enjoy doing. I mean, I was thinking about it this week because with the Achilles I've been having to log to training big cool bags full of ice and the bucket and do all of that. So the lady at my daughter's tennis training the other day did ask me if I was there to clean the floors, because I walked in with my bucket to get the ice. And I thought, this isn't going to change. I'm still going to go for the run. The days when I'll have to be getting into an ice bucket at the end of it, I won't be doing it those days. But the days when it's still just a run and it just kind of that makes you feel better to be alive and just appreciate the view and the day, that will always continue, I hope, for a long time.
Okay. On that note, I shall open it up to everybody in the room. Yes. Could we wait for the mics, please? And if you could actually mention your name and where you're from, please, which publication or TV station.
Yes, Peter Ennis from Overdrive. I was just wondering, you famously came here and saw Ingrid Christensen when you were young, and you're impressed by her power, her fluidity. How crucial was that vision to what you went on to achieve? And then when you were matching it and more, from the inside, what was that sensation like when you were running with that same power, fluidity?
I think in terms of how crucial it was, I think it was one memory. I think the London Marathon itself was a whole big inspiration of me moving towards the marathon. If I think back to coming down and kind of that smell of deep heat on the start of Blackheath and everybody milling around and seeing my dad at different points, and just then over the years, even just the theme music would just get you thinking about the marathon, and then seeing the many great performances there, but certainly seeing Ingrid come by that day, I think because then it was a mixed race as well, so she was right in there, not far behind the elite men, and just to see a woman that far up, kind of, I guess, I don't really have a lot of barriers in my head then at aged 11 anyway, but broke down any barriers that why can't you just be right there and be competitive and just be running and just be enjoying that, and I think that's the way I always like to run anyway. I've never really kind of looked at split times too much. I've just run hard and strong, and when in 2002, 2003 I was running there, I think, like I said, it's only later that you kind of appreciate really how much in the zone you kind of were and how much you ask your body and it delivers, and you just trust that it's going to be there because it has been there from in the training and in the preparation, but it's kind of like that not fear that you're not going to ever not be able to finish or maintain the pace. You kind of just trust that you will be able to.
Yes, David. Aldrin.
Hi, Paula.
Hi.
Congratulations on a wonderful career.
Thank you.
Of course, most people will associate you with the marathon, but people forget that you were a very good middle distance runner. You won the Fifth Avenue Mile twice, and you moved up slowly and worked your way to the marathon. What do you think about the rush to the marathon now, that so many athletes are moving there so quickly without moving through cross-country like you did, through the track like you did, because there are so many financial incentives to do that now?
Well, I think it's very individual. I do think it depends on the reasons for going straight to it. So I think it's like you said, if it's just because of the financial incentives going straight through it, then that's not a plan that's right for the athlete. But there are some athletes who maybe it is the right thing just to go straight to the marathon. I felt that I wanted to wait until I really had that desire to run a marathon, because I do think it's a tough event, it's a hard event, and you have to really want to do it. You have to want to do the race, to be able to put in the training and the preparation and to attack the race properly. And so as many times as people told me beforehand, yeah, you're going to be a marathon runner, that's going to be your event, I wanted it to actually feel like it was the event I wanted to attack, and I felt like I had objectives I needed to achieve on the track first and the cross country before I moved up to that, not knowing that actually once I went to the marathon I ran faster on the track than I had done before, but I still felt like I kind of almost wanted to reach my potential. And certainly for me, winning the World Cross in 2001 was a big factor. I had already committed to running London in 2002, but that kind of just made it feel even more right that I finally got the World Cross that year before.
Do you think because you worked so hard across country and at shorter distances on the roads and spent years trying to win a major title on the track, you were a better marathon runner for it? Did that all help as you went through the gears at the lower distances and then eventually hit the marathon? You were a more complete runner. Yeah,
I think so. I think certainly for me, I think it was the experiences that I'd gained on that, and maybe the fact that I started out as more of a kind of cross-country road runner, and then I did race on the track, but I certainly had more success younger on the cross-country and road relays and things like that, and I think that mentality transfers better to the marathon than the kind of track running mentality. But I think the speed and some of the disappointments of just getting out sprinted on the track, certainly maybe that made me a more mature runner, and as somebody who maybe understood my strengths a little bit better by the time I moved to the marathon, so that I was able to race the marathon to my strengths. And I certainly felt like over that distance I had a lot more choices, a lot more ways that I could run the race than I did when I was racing on the track.
Any more questions? Yes.
You are now a mentor of a lot of female runners. When you look back, when you started running marathon, who was your mentor and helped you with questions about marathon?
Oh, good question. I think, God, a lot of it, I think my inspirations coming to the marathon were three women, Ingrid Christensen, Greta Weitz and Joan Benoit-Samuelson. Because I think of the way that they showed that, particularly Ingrid and Greta, that you could compete on all three surfaces, and the track, the road and the cross country. And I think for the three women, they kind of broke down barriers for women in the marathon, and they showed what was possible, and I think just the people they are as well. I was very honoured to have met and to have known pretty well all three of them. And I think aside from the way that they would race and conduct themselves within the sport, outside of that as well, I think that they were big inspirations. And Ingrid in particular gave me a lot of advice building into the first marathon, and I was able to look at that. And then outside of that, I think just in the training situation, I think Richard's in here somewhere. I remember watching Richard go through preparations for marathons and kind of learn from that. Vincent Rousseau up in front row was an next door neighbour of mine, and I'd watch his marathon preparations. And I think just kind of being able to come down and be part of this London Marathon as well. From, I think the first time I came to the Expo was probably back in 1992. And just being able to learn little bits about how to run a marathon and how to prepare for it. But I don't think you can really learn until you actually jump in and do it yourself for the first time.
Paul, I mean, you mentioned some of the great female marathon runners of the generation just before you. Obviously, the first marathon here 35 years ago was won by Inga Simonsen and Dick Beardsley hand in hand, holding hands across the line, and that's one of the big themes of this year's 35th anniversary race. who would be your hand-in-hand partner if you could cross the line, not necessarily winning the race, but if you just could grab somebody's hand and you had a choice? Anybody you know or can imagine, Elvis, it doesn't matter. who do you want to cross the finish line with?
It's a good question. I think I'd say my dad, because I always said that I was going to run a marathon together with my dad. It never worked out because by the time that I was old enough to run it, I was focusing more on shorter distances, and then by the time I actually moved to the marathon, his knees wouldn't go that far. So that was never possible, so that would be nice. And then I think Ingrid and Greta and Joni would be my pick as well. How many people am I allowed to hold hands with?
That's a chain, yeah, that's a chain. But one in each hand, so
Yeah.
it'd be Ingrid and Greta.
Yeah, that would be nice.
James. Oh, sorry, James first, and then I'll come.
Hi Paula, I'm James from London Marathon News. Obviously this year we've got another very strong field in the women's elite race. Who do you think will win this year, and do you think the women's only record you set of 2:17:42 could be under threat?
I mean, I think it is definitely under threat. It's under threat every year. I haven't seen the latest weather forecast for there, because that is important the way it comes together, but certainly the strength of the field, it's a very strong field, and women capable of running fast in terms of picking a winner. I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard to predict because not many have raced or done much in the build-up to be able to get a gauge from. I'm sure that Mary's coming in great shape, Edna, Priska and Florence. So, I mean, it can be a really, really strong race, and I think, as always, you kind of have to wait and see how it pans out a little bit in the first half, which of course I won't get to see.
Do you think that the fact that there's 4 of them will be probably charging away at halfway and then entering a period where they might start looking at each other actually sort of means there's less chance of records going because they could be watching each other?
Yeah, I mean, it can work either way. Sometimes it can mean that you're working together to be able to run quicker, and sometimes it can mean that you're just kind of looking around a little bit. I mean, we saw the year that the men's field was really, really strong, and everybody almost kind of blew each other up a little bit because they were racing so much in the first half that it was too fast. So it can go either way. It can either make it slower and tactical, or it can mean that questions get asked of everybody, and then you find out that nobody can keep it going in the second half.
Larry, yeah.
Hi, Paul. Larry Eater with the Running Network.
Hi.
I remember asking Derek Clayton what happened. What did he feel like after he broke his world record? He said he didn't feel he was ever the same again. He said it was like a perfect day. Looking back at your 2:15, do you believe it was like a perfect running day for you?
I think it was definitely close, yeah. I mean, I think the preparation had gone really well. The only real hiccup had been when I'd had the accident with the little girl on a bike. It had knocked me over, I think, about 5 weeks before. And that was a panic for a couple of weeks, kind of trying to get over the dislocated jaw and whiplash that I got from that. But the actual, by that point, most of the training was already in the bank, and on race day I felt good, conditions were good, and certainly I do feel that I was able to run pretty close. I did was going to go quicker, but it just, things never happened, and maybe in some of 2004 I was almost in a little bit better shape in training, but it wasn't at the time of the race, and then I got injured by the time it came to the competitions. So certainly I think that day, that's why I think for the marathon, if you really need to seize the opportunity, because you put so much into the training cycle, and so many times that risk doesn't pay off, and you don't get to the start line, or conditions aren't right on the day, or something just doesn't happen, you just get a blister or an upset stomach or something, and you can't capitalize on everything. So I think that's why I did feel that day that it was really important just to keep running as hard as I could, so that I did have a chance of standing for as long as possible.
Do you think we obsess a little bit too much in the media about world records with the marathon?
I don't know. I think sometimes you ask me questions that are hard to answer. No, I mean, I think it's the nature of the sport is that we are always trying to see it develop and to see it go quicker. But sometimes there are brilliant racers that almost get lost in it because the times aren't quick, and that's a little bit of a shame sometimes, because it is about that beauty of the race as well, the beauty of seeing the athletes sort of almost like playing poker, but just the way that they are racing each other and trying to turn the race around to suit them, to have the outcome to suit them, and that can be as interesting as fast times.
Just a couple more questions. Yes, Sean.
Good to have you back on the roads, Paula, and hopefully we'll have some weather like you had in the record year. Somewhat to Tim's question about competition. You know, when you've run your marathons, you were so far ahead, you know, you had no competition. Some of your other events, you know, get to Whammy, you know, in cross country, you know, it had to give you, you know, a great feeling when you actually beat her. Do you wish maybe that there had a competitor in the marathon? You know, because sometimes your career is defined by a different competitor, or did you like to just take the marathon distance on and focus at that?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of my marathons, yeah, some of the marathons I was kind of out on my own, but other marathons, they were really down to, I mean, a couple of times in New York, it was really down to kind of Columbus Circle, 400 meters to go, and it was still a battle, and that's still a great way to race it. Certainly I felt more comfortable in that situation because a sprint finish in the marathon is different to a sprint finish on the track, on the cross country even, and I think there it's more kind of holding it and lifting the pace, and I felt like I was better at that than I was at actually the accelerations on the track, and I do think even in Chicago when I set the first world record, that really was a race against Catherine, and it was only sort of in the last third of the race really that I was kind of away. Up until that point it was still a battle, and I do think that does help you to get more out of yourself, and I think the way maybe I tried to turn it around was it almost became a battle between me and the marathon, or me and the distance, and I think that's it for so many people, and that's in a little bit the attraction and the challenge of the marathon, is it is you against the distance, against your body, against hitting the wall. It's all of those things coming together, and I think that's why so many people, when they cross that finish line on Sunday, they should be feeling really proud of themselves, and they have achieved that accomplishment of finishing the marathon, of getting through it, because it is a challenge, and it's something that I think brings people together and makes it special.
Okay, one more question, I'm afraid we do. Yes.
Hi Paula, my name's Frankie, and I'd also like to congratulate you on what's been a phenomenal career, and I think you've been an inspiration to a lot of runners growing up, like myself. I do a lot of running.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to ask you, Paula, what you think of the current state of British marathon running. Where do you feel we're at, and what do you think the country and the marathon running in this country needs to do to get to a better level?
I definitely think it's in a reasonable position now. I think we've got youngsters coming through. I think that we kind of, not just in Britain, I think a little bit within Europe as well, we kind of need to look at the support around the marathon runners, and I think it is that progression of running on the track first and the cross country, and that's getting more difficult because the cross country is almost dying in some way, so we need to do something about supporting the way that the cross country feeds through then to the marathon, and it's very difficult. I mean, people talk about being able to compete with the might of Kenya, the might of Ethiopia, but there's a lot of cultural differences go into that as well, and I think especially for the marathon that maybe becomes a little bit more apparent. You do kind of, to succeed at the marathon, you've got to live and breathe it a little bit and just invest everything in the training, the recovery, and be able to focus fully on that. And in some ways I think that's easier to do maybe in Kenya and Ethiopia than it is in Europe. I think in the US they're starting to change it by putting in place the different training camps, and it's that support of just being able to not worry about doing races here, there and everywhere, to be able to support yourself, but to be able to just focus on that full 12, 16-week preparation to really come through and really race it and know that you've put everything into the preparation so you can go out hard and really just attack it.
Paula, you've been fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. We will call it a day there. I'm sure Paula will be happy to chat to one or two people over the rest of the afternoon, the next couple of days.
Hard work, dedication. Hard work. Dedication. Hard work. Dedication. And that's what we stick to.